Hello and welcome back to the MMA Bar. Today we're going to discuss the legend of Anderson "The Spider" Silva, his rise from being a poor boy from Sao Paulo, and we'll take you through every one of his UFC fights and accomplishments. Only a few people are as synonymous with MMA as Anderson Silva. The Spider was considered invincible for 7 years, and he was the final boss of the UFC's middleweight division. Anderson Silva's UFC Championship reign is considered the longest in the company's history, as he holds the record for the longest title reign in UFC history at 2,457 days. He also holds the largest win streak record in the UFC and was poster boy of the MMA in his prime. UFC President Dana White, UFC commentator Joe Rogan, and numerous mixed martial arts pundits have named Silva as one of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time. Silva was one of the top attractions in the UFC. His style and flamboyance could not be matched, as his showboating, combined with his effective striking, produced pure magic. Silva is a third-degree black belt with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, 5th Dan black belt in Taekwondo, black Prajied in Muay Thai, and a yellow rope in Capoeira. So let's look at the career of the middleweight GOAT. Anderson da Silva was born on April 1st, 1975 in the city of Sao Paulo, Brazil. Silva's uncle and aunt took care of him as his parents were too poor to provide for him. At a young age, he was introduced to martial arts in the form of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. By the age of 12, his family was able to set aside enough money to start in Taekwondo lessons, from which he moved on to Capoeira, before finally settling on Muay Thai at the age of 16. To start MMA, Silva didn't have any amateur fights. Silva made his pro debut in a local Brazilian promotion, competing as a welterweight. He fought twice on the same night and won both of his matches, the latter being against future UFC fighter Fabrício Camoas. He then took a hiatus from MMA to compete in boxing. Silva lost to Osmar Luiz Teixeira in his first boxing match. He'd return to the cage for his first ever MMA loss by decision to future Pride FC fighter Luiz Azeredo. Silva alternated between competing in Brazil and Japan. After the loss, he went on to a 9-fight winning streak, winning 6 of those fights by either submission or TKO. After winning his first match in Japan, he was put up against Shooto champion Hayato Sakurai. Silva won to become the new Shooto middleweight champion and the first man to defeat Sakurai, who was undefeated at 20 fights. Little did Silva know that'd be the first of his many championships. He then debuted for Pride FC, where he was pitted against Carlos Newton. After winning 2 fights, Newton was a former UFC champion, but Silva knocked him out in the first round. At Pride 26, Silva faced Daiju Takase. Takase was a record of 4 wins and 7 losses, was the underdog. However, Silva was dominated on the ground for almost the entire fight before being submitted by Takase when caught in a triangle choke late in the first round. After his loss to Takase, Silva became discouraged and thought about quitting MMA, but was convinced to keep fighting by Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. Silva then left Shootbox, joined Nogueira in Brazilian top team, and started to fight in other promotions around the world. Silva went on to win 6 of his next 8 fights across Pride and Cage Rage. He won the Cage Rage title and defended his Cage Rage middleweight title thrice. Although speculation ran rampant about where Silva would sign next, the UFC announced in late April 2006 that they had signed him to a multi-fight contract. It was not long before the UFC started promoting Silva, releasing an interview segment almost immediately after announcing his arrival. Anderson Silva made his debut in the UFC Octagon in June of 2006, and it was a massive arrival to the promotion of the Brazilian great. The Spider faced Chris Leben in only the 5th UFC fight night ever on June 28, 2006, from Pearl at the Palms in Las Vegas, Nevada. Before the contest, Leben would claim that he would be sending Silva back to Japan where the competition is easier, which certainly would not end up being the case. Within the first 10 seconds of the contest, Silva had managed to snap Leben's head back with just 2 fist jabs. The incredible footwork from the 185-pound legend saw Leben wildly swinging and getting inundated with counterpunches. The fight would only last for 49 seconds, at which time Silva grabbed the neck of Leben, getting ready for a tie clench before shooting his knee to his opponent's chin, knocking him out. Silva would signal his arrival to the biggest MMA promotion in the world with an epic knockout that foreshadowed one of the greatest runs in the promotion's history. In response to the victory, the UFC tallied a poll on their main page, asking viewers to select Silva's next opponent. The majority of voters selected the UFC middleweight champion Rich Franklin. Silva fought Franklin at UFC 64 in October of 2006 and defeated him by TKO at 2 minutes 59 seconds in the first round. Silva was crowned the new UFC middleweight champion in just his second fight in the UFC. He also was only the second man to defeat Franklin, after Blackhouse teammate Lyoto Machida. This marked the beginning of Silva's reign as the UFC middleweight champion, which lasted him for over 7 years. The next fight Anderson Silva competed in was for a non-title fight because his opponent, Travis Lutter, missed weight. The Spider defeated his opponent via second-round submission at UFC 67 in February 2007. Silva's first title defense was against Nate Marquardt. The Brazilian yet again put on a show by knocking out the challenger within 4 minutes of round 1. For his second title defense, Silva rematched Rick Franklin, who he had fought for the belt. Silva bested Franklin once again by the way of a second-round TKO at UFC 77 in October 2007. Silva's third title defense was arguably the most important of his career. Henderson was the Pride welterweight champion, and this would unify the two belts following the UFC's purchase of the organization. Henderson took the first round. Silva came back in the second. He landed key strikes, got on top of the ground, and finished with a submission. Starting to get bored of the middleweight division, Silva moved up to the light heavyweight to fight James Irvin. 61 seconds was how long his debut at the weight lasted. He took most of the minute gauging Irvin, then Irvin threw a kick that Silva caught, and he then countered with a blistering straight left. Irvin dropped. The fight could have been stopped there, but Silva was able to punish Irvin a bit more. For his fourth title defense, he defeated Patrick Cote. His fifth title defense against Thales Leitz was the fight that turned some fans against Silva. He was the better fighter, and Leitz wanted nothing to do with him on the feet. Silva had multiple opportunities to batter Leitz both on the feet and on the ground. He didn't take it. He chose not to use his jiu-jitsu. Fans were not impressed. They wanted the brutal Silva they had grown accustomed to. Instead, they got passive champion who had put on the lackluster performance. The challenger deserved most of the blame, but the fans didn't see it that way. UFC 12 against Damian Maia, the breaking point for most of the fans that had started to hate Silva. Once again, Silva was dominant. Maia had little nothing for him. Silva chose to taunt and talk to Maia for the majority of the bout. At one point, Silva was warned for not engaging. Maia would do better in the final 2 rounds, but it was way out of his reach by that point. Silva retained, but the performance would turn him into a polarizing figure. His 7th title defense, a fight against Chael Sonnen, was one of the craziest title fights ever. Silva entered the bout with injured ribs, but that wasn't known until after the bout. Banged up or not, Silva was dominated by Sonnen for 4.5 rounds. On his feet and on the ground. Sonnen shocked everyone. He was on the brink of a dominant decision win to knock off Silva, and then it happened. In one of the greatest moments in the sport's history, Silva threw up a desperation triangle that forced Sonnen to tap. This was one of the biggest comebacks in UFC history. Silva scored one of the best knockouts in UFC history for his 8th title defense. Silva shocked those in attendance by throwing a left front kick straight into the face of Belfort. Belfort instantly staggered and fell to his knees and eventually on the canvas. Silva followed up with 2 strikes to the head of Belfort before the referee had seen enough. Silva went on to defend his title against Yushin Okami and rematch with Chael Sonnen for his 9th and 10th title defenses respectively. Silva wanted to retire, but he came back upon the UFC's insistence. His impressive run would come to an end at the hands of contender Chris Weidman. Silva kept unnecessarily showboating, and he finally got knocked out in the 2nd round. A rematch ensued the same year. This time Silva broke his shin bone due to bad leg kick and was carried out. He would never fight the same again. He returned after successful surgery and had a victory over Nick Diaz. However, this victory over Nick Diaz was overturned because he tested positive for PEDs. Since then, Silva lost 5 unanimous decision fights to stars: Michael Bisping, Daniel Cormier, Israel Adesanya, Jared Cannonier, and Uriah Hall. The only victory he had since his loss to Weidman was a decision win against Derek Brunson. After his loss to Hall, Silva officially retired from MMA in 2020. He announced a comeback, but in a boxing ring. He was scheduled to face former WBC middleweight champion Julio Chavez Jr. Despite going up against a pro boxer and being 11 years older, Silva ended up winning the split decision. Silva was the busier fighter throughout the fight, showing a total of 392 punches versus Chavez Jr.'s 153. For his second boxing fight, Silva faced former UFC light heavyweight champion Tito Ortiz and won the fight by first-round knockout. He also dominated fellow MMA fighter and compatriot Bruno Machado in Dubai in May 2022. But he couldn't grab the victory due to the fact that it was an exhibition fight. The Spider has had a lifelong journey through martial arts, having his life taken out of poverty in Brazil because of his success with fighting. Regardless of his losses towards the end of his career, Silva has undoubtedly delivered. Owning a ton of records and his spot in the greatest of all times list is safe. Thank you for watching this video. That's all for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell. We'll see you in the next video.